English translation, 531st contact Monday, the 5th of December 2011, 14:05 hours.
My welcome and salute, dear friend. Look here. There is the new book for you, which is what you came for today. It has become a hell of a thing.
Yes, that is why I am really here, as I told you on the 19th of November when you explained that you could not pick up this work until the 2nd of December. Greetings as well, dear friend. Yes, the book is really big. Thanks a lot also to Piero. May I flip through it?
Of course.
Ta flips through the article book.
Really a remarkable job Piero has done. Once again, my thanks to him.
He will be happy to hear that. If you still have some time, I would have some questions, which you certainly can answer for me.
Today I am not in a hurry.
Then I want to ask you about something from your field of psychology, if it is all right with you.
Of course.
Good, thanks. Here I, in fact, in my own family must battle again with habitual, respectively notorious lies, slander, and tirades of hate addressed against me. I want to know again how it is about the actual facts of this matter, and I mean in all things around it, such as also where lies the origin for such a behavior pattern, and what further consequences are connected with it.
Habitual lies and slander have their origin in an of the human since childhood from a particular compulsion situation, which also depends on notorious or pathological, respectively morbid lies, and is called pseudologia fantastica as well. It is accompanied as a rule already in childhood and adolescence by an asocial behavior through a personality disorder, whereby social standards and rules are ignored and often very blatantly violated. There exists in a certain way an inability for integration and insertion into an upright life in the human community, whereby the antisocial personality disorder behavior of the habitual liar as a rule goes on during the whole life and results in the harming of the community. Notorious, respectively, pathological habitual lying captivated persons deceive perfectly their family members as well as psychological experts. Judges, authorities, superiors, so-called friends, and other people in general, whereby the pretense of sickness and allegedly suffered violence, etc., are usual procedures. As a rule, habitual lying is also associated with a psychic disturbance, which has its origin already in childhood. However, it can also appear through sickness or accident as well as through abuse. In addition to the habitual lies, combined with a social personality disturbance, there are then also theft, the running away from parental care and the parental house, as well as, however, also vandalism, begging about some material value and habitual debt in various forms. Also, the neglect of learning of any kind regarding a valuable lifestyle, etc., is associated with it, as well as also failure to follow instructions, and the myself does not fit into the standards and rules of uprightness. The whole thing expands then more and more up to work shyness and to law-breaking, and I mean into adulthood in which everything is continued. The form of habitual lying cannot be controlled by those overcome by it. Consequently, they assess the presented lies by themselves, and from them originating slander as facts and truth. And I mean because their brains cannot differentiate between genuine memories and imagined memories. From this follows that habitual liars also willingly accept false memories, if as such lies or false memories, etc., by third persons are told or even suggested to them. Similarly, in those who are habitually lying captivated people, incorrect memories are forcibly elicited by incorrect psychological therapies, etc., if an incorrect psychological treatment is made about them. In the past, to find and make remembered the by treatment harmful experiences and events, etc., which are to remedied, respectively resolved. Such a psychological action is not only extremely disturbing and incorrect and testifies to the incompetence of the psychologically trained person, but it is fundamentally also dangerous for the habitual liars. because as a result, a great amount false memories will be built in them, which by the, in this way, incorrect psychological treatment then are taken as fact and truth and correspondingly are incorrectly assessed. And why this occurs is because memories regarding the events and experiences of other persons are taken on by the habitual liar as his own experienced facts and events. And I mean because the brain of the habitual liar is not able to differentiate his own experiences from the experiences of other persons. Many times, habitual liars emerge with an asocial personality appearance through a wrong or missing honest attention of the mother, or through a totally incorrectly exercised treatment and upbringing by her with male treatment, lies, and slander, although, however, here the same can be the case of the father's side. Also, genetic factors or a broken family home can play a very great role, as well as also alcohol, drug, medicine abuse, or mightiness of a parent or possibly both parents. The whole thing regarding habitual liars, as the aforementioned explained, is that as a rule they exhibit an asocial personality disturbance through which they have no ability to empathize in the world of thoughts and feelings of other people. This disturbance also enables them not to fit themselves into the social standards of the community. As a result, often it is infringed upon in flagrant ways, and criminal actions are not rare. Because owing to the missing sense of right and wrong between mine and yours cannot in a clear way be differentiated, and everything only is assessed for one's own advantage. Humans who are overcome by such a personality disturbance are on the one hand genetically afflicted by a parent who suffers from the same malady, and on the other hand are they hardly, with only extreme difficulty or generally not at all, to be able to change for the better. Humans of this kind are, as a rule, physically and in their speaking can become very quickly very aggressive and totally irritable. And the inhibition threshold is extremely low in them, and as a result, everything also can be accompanied by a mightiness. And once again must the running up of debt-making must be pointed out, because in this respect there appears no limit. The non-payment of debt, as well as criminal actions and acts as a rule always appear, although, however, no remorse is shown for these. At the same time, the tolerance regarding frustration is also very low, as well as also the accusations of other persons is prominent regarding things, which are based on incorrect memories or of one's own actions and acts, which then are blamed on others. So are also actions. Words or speaking of another human in an extremely negative way very quickly and with condemnation sentenced in advance as threats and provocation. Consequently, after that also is reacted to aggressively through word and act. From these emerging actions, acts, arguments, insults, and accusations originate then spontaneously, rashly and totally unplanned, exactly as well as also false, superficial explanations for one's own incorrect behavior in every conceivable connection. So others are also always to blame for conflicts with whom habitual liars cannot cope with. As a result, they always hold some other person responsible for these. The conscience of the habitual liar is insensitive and not in the position to summon up pangs of conscience or remorse. As a result, a conscious and for the better aligned rationalizing also cannot come to exist in them regarding social and interpersonal behavior. Their thoughts and feelings world is extremely limited regarding decency, respect and uprightness, etc., which leads to the fact, in order that they accordingly outwardly appear to others to be similar, they simply to imitate affected behavior and the gestures, etc., of the fellow human, and they can be very charming. In order, however, to exploit and manipulate others, and I mean because they are very well aware of their thinking, feeling-like strivings and can use them for their own advantages and purposes. There is missing thus both the ability to empathize as well as thoughts and feelings of guilt, as well as not rarely also valuable emotions regarding other people, because the thinking, feeling-like connections are so minimal that they are unable to put themselves in the thoughts and feelings of other humans. This expresses also that their sympathy for themselves likewise is lacking as well as also for other people. All of this indicates also to a very poor control regarding valuable characteristic actions. The strongly pronounced impulsiveness plays an important role, which, however, at all costs is to be hidden, although, however, contrarily, anger and rage, etc., again reveal everything. Along with this are accompanied also the underdevelopment and the absence of responsibility consciousness, which is why it is as good as impossible to show consideration for the thoughts and feelings as well as the rights and wishes of other humans. The care for relationships extremely rarely in social ability way, but likely so. They are not valuable to mention, and they very much are changing, exhibit superficial and unstable forms, whereby, however, as a rule exists. Prominently a calculating, benefiting for themselves form, which, however, by the pathological liars in every connection, can be covered up by them with their own remarkable acting skill. From this follows, and owing to the false charms of habitual liars as well as their lies, that relationships frequently emerge, in which are exploited those who trust them. That for such relationships by the liars are selected particularly unstable, psychically damaged, naive or some consciousness, understanding and reason-damaged persons, is a fact, which then underpins that the pathological liar has like a kind of fine sense for this at his disposal to recognize such humans and to make them dependent in bondage.
Which is actually so unfortunate, because what emerges from your entire explanation is how sick the humans are who are notorious liars. And is there actually nothing to be done then for them to be able to be free from this? It would be really desirable that such humans can be helped.
In all that I already explained is that it concerns a pathological matter and therefore a morbid manifestation. This is anchored, though, so deep in the consciousness that hardly a possibility exists for it to ever be completely removed. Possibly small successes could be achieved, but the rule shows that an extensive removal of the condition and therefore actual help is hardly possible. Regarding this since 1975, when we came into contact with this phenomenon in certain Earth humans, we have studied it thoroughly. We have gathered a great deal of material about this, which by our noted scientists, to which I belong as well, since then have worked on and analyzed. At the same time, we have reviewed also psychological educational material of terrestrial teaching institutes and psychologists, which, however, did not exactly bring us much insight. The up to now obtained results corresponds for that reason to what corresponds to our own research, clarifications, and discoveries, which I have explained to you.
Unfortunate, but I think that humans, who are harmed by notorious liars and slanderer damages, both in one or the other case, should defend themselves against this, shouldn't they? And how is it actually with slander? Is this always accompanied by notorious lying?
The whole thing is actually very unfortunate. However, a great deal of damage and troubles emerge from it, whereas sometimes nothing else remains, that against a denying must be considered and carried out. And as far as the slander goes, such then is to say, that as a rule slander always occurs through certain malicious or pathological lying, and I mean not just elicited by habitual liars.
This should actually be enough. Dear, thanks for your explanation. Everything is really very unfortunate, and I honestly must say, I am completely stunned because I have not known what all is behind the notorious lying. Unfortunately, I have never concerned myself to fathom into it. If I may ask you something else?
Of course.
Can pure energy even be classified into a weight form and a weight? Your father's Thoth once said that it is not measurable.
Pure energy cannot actually be described by a weight form, and also cannot be recorded or measured in terms of weight respectively, because it is absolutely weightless.
Our physicists are still puzzled today about where particles get their mass from and why solid matter actually exists. Is there another particle that is fundamentally responsible for the formation of mass?
Of course, we call it acetyl, but in descending order, it is just another step down to the actual spiritual energetic origin of matter.
I see. Then something else, and it's about the new climate conference that will be held next in Durban. Do you know about it something foreseeable? Just what will happen?
I have actually tried to look into this matter with a view to the future and can only report negative things about it. For those who are willing to do something positive for climate protection will not get away with their arguments and demands to the extent that they actually want to. Consequently, in the end, only cheap and in itself weak and hardly tangible decisions will be taken, which are less than half a good thing. Consequently, they cannot be considered valuable and, moreover, they cannot be implemented until around 2020, which makes everything useless anyway, because until then, climate destruction will continue to be irresponsibly pursued and will have disastrous consequences. And this is because various countries that contaminate the climate with CO2 and other climate-damaging substances on a very large scale, such as the largest climate destroyers, USA, India, China, and Brazil, do not want to let go of their climatically catastrophic destructive activities. Those responsible in the negating countries are seldom stupid, autocratic and arrogant, and moreover they know no responsibility whatsoever, neither for climate protection nor for the continued existence of fauna and flora, nor for humanity and the planet itself. In their stupidity, they put forward economic interests which, however, do not stand up to reason and are so wrong that it is already ridiculous. In fact, all their fuss is based on a pure craving for power and profit, and on an irresponsibility that is unparalleled. But all the other states, too, who argue arguably in favor of decisive climate protection, are not aware of their full responsibility and the real consequences of the whole thing. Nor do they understand that we are no longer talking about simple climate change, but about blatant climate destruction. But this is nothing new, because previous climate conferences have been conducted in the same ignorant manner and have not really been successful, even though certain measures have been adopted and in some cases inadequately implemented. These earlier decisions and climate treaties were also taken earlier and were just as pointless and completely unconsidered, because the constant growth of the world's overpopulation and the resulting consequences in terms of further increasing climate destruction were not considered and will not be considered this time either. So this time again, nothing tangible and valuable will emerge from the whole thing. Because if a certain reduction in climate-destroying substances is decided for years to come, and this decision is also implemented in whole or in part, it will not change anything. And this is because in all the years during which a certain and completely inadequate reduction in destructive substances is being made, overpopulation will continue to grow just as unrestrainedly as the amount and increase in climate and nature-destroying substances. Thus, all types of pollutants are and will become ever more immense and exceed everything that has been decided upon and possibly implemented for reduction. And this is because the climate-destroying substances continue to increase infinitely during the current reduction measures due to the continuing growth of overpopulation and its dangerous effects on the climate and nature.
The old familiar song. But the human beings are not getting any smarter. Neither the rulers, nor the other responsible parties, nor the people themselves, because huge numbers of children continue to be born into the world, which means that the overpopulation is growing and growing inexorably. But this means that all the climate-destroying waste and waste products generated by the factories, etc., of industry and commerce, households and the human beings themselves are growing inexorably, as is the growth of motor vehicle traffic and motorsport, etc. Not to be forgotten is also the enormous amount of methane gas production, etc., caused by the millions of livestock farms throughout the world which supply the masses of humanity with meat and all kinds of other animal products. And the fact that this intensive animal husbandry in many countries is often accompanied by an immensely catastrophic cruelty to animals, which knows no bounds because there are no comprehensive laws and controls, is also not mentioned, nor are the blatant amounts of waste and excrement produced by the animals, which are a burden on the world and its nature. But that all these and many other evils caused by overpopulation are destroying the climate, and at an ever faster rate, is still denied by corporate-paid, profit-hungry scientific idiots. The corporations themselves don't care a jot about it. And neither do the governments and authorities, who do not take the really necessary steps and do not issue the necessary laws and decrees to stop all the madness and to control everything closely. And so it goes on in the old rut, making things worse and worse, and increasingly catastrophic in terms of climate and natural destruction, as I have been predicting since the 1950s and also in the 1960s and 1970s, which has not received any response from various governments, newspapers, and radio stations, or for which I have been made ridiculous. And also today, when everything is increasing and natural disasters are becoming more and more extensive, more and more violent and more primeval, which makes all my predictions come true, there is still no turning point in sight for the better and for reason. The problem of overpopulation is still not recognized as the root cause of the effects of the destruction of the climate and of nature, with its fauna and flora, and of the habitat of humanity, etc. This is due to the fact that out of the masses of humanity, technology, chemistry, physics, industry, countless households, agriculture and intensive animal husbandry, as well as the construction and destruction of fertile land, rainforests, and also the drying up of streams, rivers, and lakes, etc., are all being carried out. These are all factors of global destruction. Here and there is something said in this regard by scientists and other human beings who are still rational and thinking, but it is not more than voices in the desert that go unheard. And this is also the case with regard to the fact that the admonishing voices are simply shouted down when they point out that only a worldwide and state-controlled, drastic birth control can prevent the worst from happening, which is now approaching earthly mankind in giant strides and is beginning to impose an all-destroying fate on it. So the question is not whether a rigorous and universal birth control is something that interferes with the private lives of the human beings on Earth, or whether it is a mere necessity for the survival of the earthly human race, which is indeed the case. But the question is, how long will the human beings of the Earth continue to cling to their selfishness and their false self-righteousness, and whether they will finally come to their senses, make the correct decision, precisely for a rigorous and universal birth control, in order to guarantee the continued existence of earthly humanity, the existence of nature with its fauna and flora, and the planet itself.
Unfortunately, this will remain so for a long time to come, for in this respect real reason can only be expected from Earth humans. For unreasonableness and selfishness are predominant, and from time immemorial all religions have contributed and continue to contribute a great deal. Your warnings are therefore also ignored, not by the rulers and other leaders of the people, nor by earthly humanity itself. There will continue to be few who are rational in this respect, and consequently, there will be much suffering on Earth humans.
So unfortunately, the old saying comes into play, he who will not hear must feel. This is the wisdom of the final conclusion. But since the majority of the human beings lack reason, at least in the aforementioned respect, they also lack the sense of perception, recognition, and observance of the creational natural laws and recommendations through which true love, peace, freedom, and harmony are conveyed. And it is precisely these values through which the human being alone can recognize life and the world, and thus also effective reality and its truth, and act accordingly. This is because these high values make the human being think about and rethink all things and achieve value-impaired results. And the values of love, peace, freedom, and harmony are not only anchored in the creational natural laws and recommendations, because they are also fundamentally given in every human being as biological laws, and therefore only need to be grasped and brought to bear. And the phenomenal thing about it is that if these high values are cultivated, understanding, and reason also align themselves to them, and a clear sense of responsibility is created which is understood. And this also happens in such a way that everything has an effect on fellow human beings, on nature and its fauna and flora, and on the planet and on everything that exists on and in it, as well as on everything that is contained and given in the universe in every way in the fine and coarse material.
You say it in an interpretation of the spiritual teaching.
It is just my way of formulating the facts according to my mission, which is to make sure that everything is said and taught in clear and understandable words. But this is not a habit. It is well considered because I have to be instructive about the spiritual teaching. Then a question regarding Mars. Besides the so-called Mars face, respectively the corresponding picture, there is also a picture called Mars Yeti, which looks like a sequence from a Bigfoot film. Do you know anything about it?
Yes, it is a natural artifact, as is the case with the so-called Mars face. However, the Mars Yeti artifact is very small compared to the Mars face artifact.
Then let me ask you again about the fact that you said some time ago that you, Plejaren, and your Federation are the only aliens who have contact on Earth, and only with me. You also said that there are not other aliens flying in and out of Earth. But somehow I can't get along with that, because you have also mentioned on several occasions that there are 3 groups of strangers on Earth besides you, who came or are coming but who are unknown to you and with whom you cannot or do not want to come into contact. At least that is what you told me several times in private conversations. Your daughter Simyase and Quetzal have also explained the same thing. These things were not recorded in the contact reports because they were private conversations, but I think that this is why we should talk about it again. As I said before, I simply cannot deal with this matter.
I deliberately did not talk about it, and I don't want to talk about it now either. But it seems that it should be talked about now because you speak about it openly. The reason I kept silent about what you mentioned was that many Earth humans and so-called UFO researchers are increasingly making allegations about sightings and alleged contacts with extraterrestrials. In the last few years, the hysteria in this regard has been greatly reduced, even if certain unfair journals, etc., with regard to reports of diffuse sightings of unidentified flying objects and alleged contacts with extraterrestrials still cast a spell over their bona fide readership. The UFO and UFO contact hysteria should not be evoked again, which is why I did not speak of those strangers who have probably been in earthly space and unknown to us for a long time, and with whom we also have no connections. But when I think about it now, I find that the whole thing is perhaps advisable to be mentioned in the above-mentioned respect, because apparently you too have misunderstood my statement, as well as that of my daughter and of Quetzal. It is indeed the case that no new Earth foreigners known to us have come and are coming to Earth other than those who have been operating here for a long time or those who have joined or belong to our Federation. Only in this respect my speech was intended and should have been understood in this way. But apparently I was not precise enough in my statement, which led to misunderstanding or misunderstanding. What I explained was meant then, if I am to repeat what I said and make it clearer that in recent times no new Earth foreigners have come or are coming to Earth. Thus, only those foreigners who have been approaching the Earth for a long time and who are not under our control are and remain. Excluded from my statement, therefore, were those Earth foreigners unknown to us with whom we do not or do not wish to come into contact. And as these fly in and out of earthly space, they are therefore not newcomers, but rather those who have been coming to the Earth again and again for a very long time, and who also stay in this space for a long time. These 3 foreign groups are therefore not included in my statements, nor are the future Earthlings, who form a further group and with whom we also have no connections.
I thought that something was not clear enough, because after all you have explained about this over the last 2 years. I, like many other human beings, have assumed that only you, Playaran, and your federated ones are active in earthly space and fly in and out. The fact that the aliens unknown to you and the future aliens were not mentioned, however, led to a huge misunderstanding in the sense that you, Playaran, and your federated are absolutely the only aliens who circulate in earthly space.
This misunderstanding is very regrettable, and it was not my intention to cause it.
Then it is also possible that sometimes not only your flying objects can be observed, but also those of the Earth foreigners unknown to you and of the future ones. You, for your part, do not let yourselves be observed as often as it used to be the case. So therefore, unless they are the secret terrestrial test objects of military form, sometimes they must be those unknown to you and the future ones who are seen.
That is correct. But if they are already Earth foreigners or the future ones, then they are not those who appear again, but only those unknown to us, as I will again state.
So they are not newcomers from the depths of space, flying in and out of Earth, but only those of whom you have spoken in each case, but who were not mentioned in your last explanations. Consequently, it follows that while it is correct that you and your Federation are the only ones known to you as Earth foreigners, and as such, visit Earth. But since those unknown to you and those to come are not known to you as Earth foreigners, you have only spoken of those extraterrestrials that you know, thus of you Playaran and your federated ones. This misunderstanding is stupid, because this is again material for the know-it-alls, critics, and adversaries, who are too stupid to understand that just by incomplete statements and explanations also misunderstandings can appear. Perhaps it is also our mistake if we discuss some things only privately without writing up reports about them. It is also not uncommon for misunderstandings to arise from the fact that some of your statements and explanations are not complete. But look here, you said this at the 424th contact on the 17th of June, 2006.
And with regard to contacts between Earth humans and strangers to the Earth, it can only be said again and again, as has been done many times before, that you are the only human being on Earth who is capable of maintaining contact with us Playaran and our federated contacts. With regard to other Earth foreigners, there are also no contacts in any form between such and Earth humans, for apart from us, there are no other Earth foreigners who would be active in earthly space. And what you say about the tissue of lies of alleged contact persons in connection with us, the facts speak their own language.
From this, according to your present explanation in sentence 83, it is clear that I am the only human being on Earth who has contact with you Playaran and with your federated contact, but not another Earthling. With sentence 84 I understand, and probably every reasonable human being as well, that there are no other extraterrestrial beings active on Earth respectively in the earthly space in any mission-related form, and therefore no permanent contact with Earthlings exists or is maintained with such. And under sentence 85 is to be understood the same as already stated in sentence 83. But the whole thing does not say anything about the fact that through those strangers to the Earth who are unknown to you, and through the future ones, short touches and so-called examination contacts might have taken place.
That is clear and correct. And what is to be said regarding contacts of fate and examination contacts is that some of the strangers unknown to us may indeed have touched the Earth. But we neither have any control over this, nor have we been able to observe such contacts ourselves. If, in the course of time, we have spoken of possible touches, respectively short contacts, then these have been related to those that have unintentionally or intentionally taken place with us Playaran or with our federated. However, we do not know and are not interested in what happened to those unknown to us and those to come.
This is a clear and unmistakable statement. But the fact of the many atmospheric phenomena and the test flights of secret military flying apparatus that have been observed in various countries, but could not and still cannot be identified as a whole, and which are called UFOs remains, doesn't it?
Of course, because this cannot be denied, So also the fact of secret test flights of futuristic flying apparatuses cannot be denied, although this is nevertheless constantly being attempted by denials. But now it is time for me to go again. Goodbye, dear friend.
Bye and Salome, Pita. Goodbye also, dear friend.